Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Part two of chapter 13. We're going to focus on the wholesaling side. And officially, when we talk about wholesalers, we're talking about all the activities in terms of selling any kind of good or service where you're getting in between the people who make stuff and the people who actually sell stuff and the consumer. So, for example, we generally buy from retailers. Retailers generally buy from wholesalers, and wholesalers buy directly from the manufacturers. So, we're going to talk about the variety of different types of roles or functions, responsibilities, jobs, whatever you want to call it, that wholesalers perform. And then we're going to talk a little bit about different types of wholesalers and then what types of functions here or responsibilities they each take on. And we'll just take them one at a time. And typically, when we think about a wholesaler, I mean, obviously they're going to actually sell. So for them, their customers are going to be people at the retail level. They also do promotion, and in many ways, most wholesalers are going to be specialists in some way. So they may specialize in a certain product category or a broad range of different types of products. So it would be very rare that you have a wholesaler who is involved in selling furniture as well as selling chicken, as an example. I mean, it's just totally different industries. The requirements and the functions and the added value that they provide are so distinct and different across those two examples, even if they are extreme. They also provide an opportunity to provide an assortment. So typically, they select the items that really make sense for the people who are actually selling products directly to consumers. They tend to have an eye and an ear in both sides of the value chain. So they know enough about the retailing end and how it eventually connects with end user buyers. And they also know what's going on in the manufacturing side in terms of what are some of the trends and the things that they're creating and building to satisfy certain needs. And so they do perform a great deal of functions. Now also too, a point that I want to make though is keep in mind this type of stuff here in terms of selling and promoting. Generally, these types of wholesalers have relationships already with retail. And so they provide a valued role because of those relationships, and that valued role is probably valued more for relatively small manufacturers. If you're a large company like a Procter and Gamble, you pretty much deal directly with retail, and so you don't necessarily have to have a wholesaler. There's not a whole lot of value added there. But if we're talking about relatively small types of manufacturers, typically they're going to go to someone who has a trusted relationship within the retail channel because they themselves do not currently have one. Also, too, with the assortment, many times when we think about the customers of wholesalers or retailers, they usually will look to, and this is also very important again for small types of retailers. They kind of trust the relationships and the expertise that the wholesaler has with the manufacturer. And so they might have a better handle on, what's the latest and greatest toy that might be coming out of Hasbro or Mattel. Someone like a Toys R Us, probably they have a direct relationship, or they do have a direct relationship with the manufacturers. They don't need the knowledge and expertise of a wholesaler in the toy industry, but a relatively small retailer in the toy sector would probably benefit by that level of expertise. Also, too, is a concept called bulk breaking, and they basically they buy large carloads, large lots of product, and essentially what they do is they break it down into small quantities. Again, for relatively small retailers, it gives them an opportunity to get bulk rate pricing from manufacturers through these wholesalers. Again, if we're talking about a large retailer, they generally deal directly with manufacturers. Also, too, they may provide some warehousing costs. Again, these functions are more important for companies on either side, manufacturing or retail side. They're in the middle of these wholesalers who are relatively small and have limited resources. So that's always the role that they will play. It's not to say that you can't get involved with larger retailers or manufacturers, but the bulk of their clientele will be smaller kinds of organizations. And so many small organizations on the retail side may not have the physical space to hold inventory. So what they might do is they might have a function where they hold the inventory, and then what they do is they essentially parse it out and deliver it as the demand for the product or the service starts to increase. So again, we're talking about trying to provide some sort of support for relatively small retailers as well as manufacturers. They also transport product and service, and depending on the need, they may also serve as a financier. Many people who run small retail shops don't have the resources to float on a 30 to 45 day basis, where they have to essentially pay for the product and may have to hold it on their shelves for 30 to 45 days or even longer, depending on the product category. And so what they do is they give them an opportunity to essentially finance the inventory by being able to pay for it up front. They essentially give the retailers a loan, and then a lot of times what might happen is they will pay back that loan as the inventory for the product is actually sold at the retail level. So again, very important functions. Another function that they perform is this whole concept of risk bearing. You see this a lot when it comes to perishable types of items. They absorb risk. Flowers, as an example, meats, produce, any of those things where spoilage is very high or there is a high incident of theft. And so what they do is they provide safety and security by way of the tankers or the secured trucks, refrigerated trucks, all those things that might enable a smaller company who can't afford to own some of the equipment that might be needed to secure refrigerated containers, as an example, but they're able to deliver their product to their consumer without the product being spoiled or in some way defective. Also, too, wholesalers have good information. I think I mentioned this before. They really know a lot on both sides, to their left, to their right, to their up, to their down. So they know and have a lot of information about the retail marketplace and, as a result, consumers. But they also know about what's going on from the manufacturers. So they're really a real good source of information. Wholesalers also, too, they provide good, I guess you would call them consulting services and advisory types of services. And again, it's about having good information, knowing the marketplace, really important type of function if we're talking about novices in the marketplace, either on the manufacturer side or the retail side. Now, all those different functions are not typically performed by every single type of wholesaler. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about different types of wholesalers and talk a little bit about some of those specific functions that they might engage in as different types of wholesalers. These merchants wholesalers are usually typically the largest ones or the full service ones. These are the ones who might perform or at least have the ability to perform all the functions we just talked about. And so the limited ones typically are going to be the ones who have the fewer services. They're going to be specialists, specialty item, specialty services kinds of wholesalers. So they run the gamut, and you probably even have some who are what we would call in between. So let's say, for example, there are 8 key functions. A full service performs all 8. Somebody who does it on a limited basis may only perform a couple, maybe 3, and maybe somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 might be somewhere in the middle range. When retailers or manufacturers decide who to deal with at the wholesale level, the important point is to find a partner who is delivering the kinds of service in a good quality way that you yourself value and need within the supply chain. Brokers and agents, very similar to what we see in a lot of domains. People who are brokers and agents typically don't take a whole lot of risk. They're essentially relationship types of organizations, and they bring parties together. They don't take title. They perform few functions. They have sort of a specialty in terms of the product category, the product line that they actually get involved with. They're brokers. They're there to bring people together who don't know each other. So if you happen to be a small manufacturer and you're trying to get your product on the shelves of retail, it's their relationship, these wholesalers, with people who are in the retail channel that might enable you to get on those shelves. But they're not going to buy the product from you and then sell it to the retailer. They basically bring two organizations together, set up a meeting, and they might provide services like help you negotiate some of the terms. But what they typically try to do is they don't remain neutral. Depends on who hires them, but they can work both sides. So, but they're there to broker relationships, and they're really good in terms of providing information. Also, too, there are some companies who they have these manufacturer sales branches. These are typically organizations that are providing services to manufacturers. They call them manufacturers reps. In the context of manufacturers, typically it's going to be a manufacturer who doesn't have the money or resources to have a full-time sales staff to sell to the retail trade. And so what they'll do, again, more on a service consulting kind of basis, they will act sort of as a sales branch or a sales office, which enable you to develop a relationship with people downstream, mainly the retailers. Now, wholesalers, very similar to what we talked about in the retail side, they have various strategies that they employ. At the end of the day, very same philosophy. It all starts with segmentation and targeting. But here we're talking about segmenting and targeting organizations rather than consumers, like we were talking about with the retail side. So for them, it's segmenting retailers. It could be based on size. It could be based on resources. It could be based on product line. It could be based on geographic location, lots of different things. And they have to find a way to be a point of difference for their ultimate client. And that point of difference might be information. It might be in certain relationships that they have. It might be in their ability to help finance inventory. It might be in their ability to transport sensitive, perishable types of material. Maybe they have a fleet of containers or trucks that have refrigeration capacity, and so someone who's trying to transport fresh fruit or flowers or maybe meat or some other vegetables, that might be an important thing. And so for them also too, they have to really think about their marketing mix. So what's the assortment of the products and services that they represent? What type of pricing structure are they talking about? Are they basically taking a cut, or we're talking about a broker or an agent to bring parties together? Are they actually taking the inventory from the manufacturer and then marking it up and selling it to the retailer? They do promotion. Again, it's more business to business types of promotion. And then for them, distribution, it really kind of depends on the supply chain and the logistics that they're capable of doing. So if they have fleets where they can actually transport things cross country through rail or through interstate, different type of distribution strategy compared to someone who has a fleet of airplanes where they can fly things from point A to point B. Again, the objective is for them to develop some sort of value in the actual supply chain. Again, I just repeated this already. Segmentation, targeting, positioning could be size of company, type of customer, people who need certain types of services that we talked about before. These decisions, again, I just mentioned this previously, but it's really about deciding what the range or breadth of products that they actually want to take on. Again, all of these have to do with the level of expertise that they might possess. Take a few minutes as we wind up this chapter that talks about some of the trends that we might be observing in the wholesaling industry. Like any industry, there's always a need for greater efficiency. So especially when we're talking about transportation, especially if we're talking about financing and actually inventorying items, So having a great system of transportation, and in this day and age, it's not only about getting it from point A to point B, but it's getting it from point A to point B in a great way, in terms of it being in great shape. If we're talking about something that's perishable, so getting the product in great physical condition is always very important. But also too, getting it from point A to point B may be great, but if it can't get there in a timely manner, it may not be as valuable to someone. So there has to be some sort of added value in there in terms of transportation. But also too, I think I've made this point before, we're becoming more and more reliant on relationships and relationship building. So part of the added value at a bare minimum has to be in relationships, because sometimes it may be the relationship that gets you the best price, for example. It might be the relationship that gets you to the front of the queue in terms of expediency to get the product delivered on time. So it boils down to relationships. And most customers want more services, because think about this. Every retailer who's relying on a wholesaler, they compete with other retailers for end user customers. So the more value you can add to that retailer, the better they're able to add value to their customers. And of course, technology is always going to be there to help boost productivity. Also, too, very important to use technology for security purposes, to be able to keep an eye on and securing and keeping an eye as far as where products are in the supply chain delivery-wise. And so there's all sorts of technology that they're using to code boxes and crates of items to be able to track it in a fairly efficient way, to give better estimates in terms of when the product might hit the dock or the airport, or might pull into the loading dock. So you can plan that into your delivery of that product to your end customers. There's nothing worse than having a huge shipment of a very popular item to Target or Walmart that's delayed, and the delay is unforeseen, and you have customers coming into the door trying to find out what's going on with that product that was advertised that created that type of demand. Anyway, so that wraps up chapter 13, retailing and wholesaling. So I will see you on the other side in the next chapter.